quantify my view on the economic system when we come back from break. But please continue with this point. You were telling me off air that look, these scandals, regardless, basically, if Obama's not doing what you want, you've got to politically go after him with whatever ammo is getting traction.
Yeah, during the 2008 campaign, there was this mantra, let's talk about the issues, let's talk about the issues. This was Obama attempting to deflect attention from the fact that nobody knew who he was. If we can look at the question of Clinton and Gingrich, and that dirty deal, which would have been very damaging, was stopped by the Lewinsky scandal. How can we apply that till today? You look at Obama's press conference when he presented this so-called purported birth certificate. He basically said, we've got to get down to solving the main questions. Now, what he means by that, and this is what he told the Washington Post editorial board a week before he was inaugurated, is a grand bargain of genocidal austerity to flay the American people alive, to skin the American people alive. You have the Republican attack on the entitlements is direct, right? Open, frontal attack. Obama's attack is a flanking attack. It's a sneak attack, right? Obama bores from within. He says, I'm going to save Medicare, and then he's going to destroy it.
Well, it's a fake choice. The Republicans have the more austere, and then by a few degrees, he says, no, I'm going to defend the people, and then impales them.
So what could upset this apple cart right now? He says that he solved the birth certificate. I don't think he has. I think there are basically three complexes, right? One is the birth certificate issue. The questions we have on that are obviously, if you're a historian, right, when you say release the document, right, we want the document, it means you want to get it in your hands. And what I mean by that is, if it's claimed that this document is there, I want to know the arrangements under which scientific experts, including carbon dating or whatever there is, whatever anybody wants to do, scholars, like a guy like me, or news agencies, different ones, have to have access to this.
By the way, there's been 3 different versions that AP and others, CNN, have been given. And in the versions, in fact, give me a document cam shot. Folks can even see this.
He's making up for all the time. He gave you 3 now.
Well, no, look. This one says any alterations invalidate the certificate. This one that AP put out has that message on it. And then there's this version. I think this was what CNN. You can barely see it there, and it's totally different color. And then now here's the one the White House put out with this weird green paper in the background. And then you've got fonts in the same words, Webster, that aren't even the same font that I as a layman can see. Listen, the reason I think this is a setup is this is so shoddy on purpose. It's designed. Webster, I'm telling you, something else is going on here.
We want to examine the original document.
Yeah, but what is this? Why are there all these different versions?
Maybe WikiLeaks will leak one, too, except that they're a CIA-limited hangout. No, we want scholars, scientists, experts, news agencies to be able to examine the original, under controlled conditions and all of that. The larger issue in terms of his constitutional qualification is, did he become a naturalized citizen of Indonesia through his parents? And since that wouldn't quite deprive him of his U.S. nationality, did he then in 1981, on his way to Pakistan, pass through Indonesia and renew his Indonesian passport as part of that? That would have been an affirmative act of allegiance to Indonesia.
Stay there. We got a break. Final segment with Webster coming up, and Webster's here in town to be interviewed for a film. So never fear, there'll be more of Webster at PrisonPlanet.tv as well. Then Dr. Bob Bowman coming in after the interview. Coming up, Dr. Bob Bowman's going to be in studio with us to talk about the economy and a host of other issues. Webster Tarpley is our guest here with us now. Very informative last hour. And it's great having Tarpley here in town. Flew Tarpley into town so that he could be here in studio with us today. Webster, finishing up on the birth certificate. There's no doubt there's been a cover-up of all of his records. And the White House has said, we're not releasing any of the college, the professors. We've never seen such secrecy. And why defend $2 million plus in suits wanting the certificate and then now only release it? It seems like they were starting to get scared that it was getting so big. But then they released this new certificate, and it just looks completely fake. They could make a better fake than this.
Perhaps. It's all very suspicious. Again, we want to be able to examine the original document, and we need answers about this Indonesian question. Did he reaffirm his citizenship of Indonesia in 1981? And that would have been essentially as an adult, and that would, at that point, he would no longer be a U.S. citizen. But there's also a political reason behind this, obviously, which I think is important. One is the blackmail question. That Obama is somebody who is, I think, pretty obviously blackmailed. And a lot of people wondering what happened in the 72 hours before the bombing of Libya when he told Senator Lugar of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee there will be no attack on Libya. And then, lo and behold, there was this attack on Libya. What happened in the meantime? Hypothesis. British intelligence has some proof about Kenya or Indonesia, or French intelligence. They went to him and said, look here, you're going to bomb Libya because this is what we want. The Daily Beast recently had an article about a Democratic insider on Capitol Hill asking, after Obama's budget disaster, how do we get rid of this guy? So that's a Democrat now, maybe a left.
We saw the Washington Post a year ago say that they were talking about him not running again.
All right. One way is through the birth certificate, the constitutional qualifications between Kenya, Indonesia, or other things we don't know. The second one is the Rezko-Blagojevich complex. In other words, the Chicago cesspool of corruption, the Illinois bipartisan combine, and so forth. Because whatever applies to Rezko and Blagojevich is possibly applying to him. And then you have the Larry Sinclair complex, right, which people know about. So those are three that we know about, but there are possibly more.
I'd rather go after Obama and the next Republican puppet, because they're all going to be crooks. We know that unless it's Ron Paul or somebody, on GE being given waivers for their coal power plants the day the new regulations that they're just forcing through, they're not even law, shutting down their competition, or GE not paying taxes, or people at Treasury giving themselves waivers to get bailout money. I mean, I understand you're saying this is the type of fodder the public likes, but, you know, quite frankly, Obama and limos with men, I mean, it's I don't even want to get into it. And the birth certificate, it's like a swamp, a quagmire that I can't get out of, and you could never find the end of. I mean, I'd rather say, what are you doing pushing torture, bub?
I would make the following kind of appeal. I think basically a lot of people who consider themselves right-wingers or conservatives or libertarians have, I think, a fairly decent willingness to entertain these issues. I would appeal to leftists. I would appeal to people, for example, who thought that Obama...
People that want my guns. Nice folks.
Well, you know, this is a group, right? And there they are. Let's not write them off.
A group of addled morons.
Well,
sorry.
You know, depends, right? Addled morons everywhere.
I'm just being sarcastic. I'm sarcastic.
If you were appalled by the attack on Libya, for example, right? If you were appalled by the West Point speech of December 2009, which was a declaration of war against Pakistan, and that's getting to be really big now.
But the Left Soul Foundation run. They love the wars. They love torture.
That's why I got to make my direct appeal here. That if you didn't like what he did with Pakistan, and he's doing more of it, if you don't like Libya, what are you going to do to stop an attack on Syria? What are you going to do to it, for example, Belarus, Poland at one end, Russia at the other end, a color revolution in Belarus. Lukashenko decides he's going to put it down. Polish troops come in from the west, Russian troops come in from the east, Polish NATO troops collide with Russian troops.
That already happened in Pristina, in Kosovo.
That's worse than anything in the Middle East, because there you've got not just atomic, but hydrogen weapons on both sides. How do you stop that? On the issues, yeah, I'm all for the issues. I argue issues a lot, right? My main argument is issues. But I would appeal to leftists. You've got to be open to these questions about the constitutional qualifications and so forth. Because if you don't do this, you're letting the blackmail syndicate rule the day. Because Obama he can't make decisions based on political considerations. He's got to say...
No, I understand the political... I understand, Webster, the political calculus. But to add a word here, I understand the political calculus. All I'm saying, I mean, I see if you've got a bad George W. Bush, a bad Clinton, a bad Obama, that it creates the separation of powers we need over the oligarchy controlling the presidency if we politically destroy his puppet.
And look, if you have people in the Congress that you think are somehow different than, you know, anybody with a subcommittee in the Congress or a committee, can put out subpoenas. And, you know, you can maybe get a majority.
So you're saying it's a useful sabotage tool. Let me ask you this. In your gut, what do you think's really going on with Obama? With the birth certificate? I
think that I'm not sure where exactly the problem point is, but the obvious evasion, he paid a tremendous political price for refusing to release whatever this is, if it's assuming it's real. He has created a constitutional crisis. This is now a constitutional crisis.
So he's now legit. I mean, he's now supercharged the debate.
He did this, you know, again, if he had it and he refused to release it, this is an act of incompetence beyond anybody's belief. And it's a bumbling, arrogant refusal to put this out. Now, that then leads you, is he really that incompetent, or was it that he didn't have it and he had to concoct it? So that's another possibility. But transparency, right? These guys talk about, my administration will be the most transparent. Well, let's see it. And again, I think that people, if you don't like the fact that he's a Wall Street puppet, if you don't like the fact that he's a warmonger, that the police state has gotten worse under Obama than it was under Bush, and if you don't like the fact that he's a union buster, that he guarantees the defeat of all the union struggles. You look at what he did in Wisconsin. He didn't support those people. He damned them with faint praise. So if you want to get a different Democratic nominee, right, something a little bit better than this, there's got to be a primary opponent, and one way to clear the way is for these scandals to be further developed. So I wouldn't turn away from that at all. And I certainly don't think this is a plan of the ruling elite.
Webster, we are out of time.
The ruling elite wants to keep him in power and blackmail him for at least 2 more years.
No, I understand, and perhaps 4 more. Some Republicans have said they want to keep him there forever. Then they can blame everything on him, and a lot of this agenda is all part of what they're doing.
And he suppresses the popular movements of protest.
We've only got about a minute, okay, because I got a mini guest popping in, and then Bob Bowman's coming in, Webster, and we're going to be interviewing you more later. It's just I could talk to you for 10 hours here, and I know the listeners could listen for 10 hours, but on your unique perspectives. But briefly, they're now going from denying we're in a depression to more and more having to, denying there's inflation, to admitting it. The Chinese, everybody racing away from the dollar, gold and silver spiking, oil, commodities spiking. A 60-second summation on where the economy is right now in the meltdown.
Well, the entire effort of 2010 was to direct the crisis away from the dollar, right, to dump the depression onto the euro. And what they've done with that is they've partially wrecked the euro through Greece, Portugal, Ireland, and maybe Spain. So the euro is now significantly weakened, but that hasn't done anything to save the dollar. So the dollar is now in this constant process of decline. If we have a default, I would warn against this default. The bankruptcy or default of the United States would lead to catastrophe on a world scale, and ultimately to something like...
So in the lesser of 2 evils is to hyperinflate the currency.
The answer to this, there is no answer between deflationary crash, which is even worse, and hyperinflation.
You know what? I've got to do this. We're going to have you in at the end of this hour for 5 minutes to really sum this up. We're going to come back to this in about 40 minutes from now. Webster,